The war in Ukraine is entering its third summer. By almost all metrics, Kiev appears to be on the back foot. So, what is the situation on the ground? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Andrei Kelin. Russia appears to have significant momentum now in the Ukraine war. The Russian economy is propping up the effort. Ukraine lacks weaponry, ammunition and morale. Is the conflict inching towards a resolution? And what would that look like?
On the front lines, Ukraine soldiers have been fighting for years. While much of the war is fought using drones and satellite images, the trenches and slow pace of movement is reminiscent of 20th century warfare. Despite spending months at a time in these conditions, many still feel there is no option when facing an enemy like Vladimir Putin.
He would never stop just in Ukraine. He would invade like other European countries, like the Baltic countries. He is acting from the side of the power, and if you let him do it, he's not going to stop over here. He will continue exploring his borders.
There are reports Ukraine is rationing ammunition. By its own admission, the Ukrainian military has 1/3 the number of drones the Russians do.
We are withstanding. Of course, we need more weapons. We need more firing power. We need long-range missiles, not to allow them to enter to our state, and they are hearing that the supply of weapons are not arriving on time, and they are taking the advantage of it.
Some of the $61 billion US aid package has started trickling into Ukraine, but over $50 billion approved in February from the EU has so far yet to materialize. Meanwhile, French and German leaders said Ukraine should be allowed to hit Russian military targets inside Russia in the name of self-defense.
Representatives of NATO countries, especially in Europe, especially in small countries, they must be aware of what they are playing with. They must remember that this is, as a rule, a state with a small territory and a very dense population. And this is a factor that they should keep in mind before talking about striking deep into Russian territory.
Ukraine's allies maintain they will support Kiev as long as it takes, but can they keep up with Russia's war machine and seemingly endless resources?
Earlier, I spoke to Russia's ambassador to the United Kingdom, Andrei Kelin. He says nothing will stand in the way of Russia's victory in Ukraine.
I will confirm that we did serious advances, but not only in the region from the north in direction of Kharkiv, but mostly from the east to west in Donbas area. I think that both advances are important in this sense because the whole front line, which is now more than 1,000 kilometers, is moving from the east to west. And but this is just the beginning of the summer campaign. We are still in May, and we have 3 more months, or 4 or 5 months, and I think that we move very seriously now.
So do you predict more advances for Russia throughout June, July and August, what you call the summer campaign?
No, I think that the overall opinion is that nothing will stop us to do this, because it is clearly that we have serious advantages on different lines. We have numerical superiorities in equipment, in techniques, in armor, in artillery, and also in manpower, certainly.
So you feel Russia is now unstoppable in its war against Ukraine?
No, I hardly. It is. You can compare economic situation in both countries. We did manage our economy to go seriously to help the army. We have trained people over there. People is not mainly but on contract over there, so they fight for money. In Ukraine, it is totally different. Its economy depends on the others. It does not produce any significant advantages or any significant supplies to the army. They depend totally on the foreign aid here. The soldiers are now less and less trained because of course they have declared a new appeal to the army, but it is now supplied with people that are not trained and that are not motivated at all to go to fight. So most of them are trying to escape differently, either to Europe or to Moldova, which is Moldavia next to it. Some of them are running to Russia as well. So just in all ways, we do not see that, especially this issue of motivation. It is now which was important at the beginning of events for the Ukrainians. Right now, you do not see any queues that to the places where they register people for the army.
Well, let's meet our guests. Joining us from Brussels is Shea. He's former Deputy Assistant Secretary General of NATO. In Moscow, we have Sergey Markov, former public spokesperson for Russian President Vladimir Putin and Director of the Institute of Political Studies. And I'm delighted to say here in the studio with me is Martin Smith, Senior Lecturer in Defence and International Affairs at the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst. Gentlemen, you're all very welcome to Roundtable. I'll come to you first, Martin. The Russians certainly seem more confident and more bullish right now. How vital will this summer campaign be for Ukraine?
I think absolutely vital. The bottom line is that Ukraine needs to hold the line. I'm not sure it's that realistic to envisage significant regains of territory on the part of the Ukrainians. But conversely, I think if they can reinforce the front, if they can, with the new, particularly United States, but other help from NATO countries that's now been promised and indeed is started to materialise on the front lines, if they can reinforce the front lines, if they can enhance their air defence capabilities, and also, perhaps more controversially in some quarters, if they can continue the active phase of the war in the Black Sea and against Russian military targets in occupied eastern Ukraine and Crimea, and indeed showing that they're able and willing to strike important infrastructure targets in Russia itself. If Ukraine can carry on doing all of those things for the rest of this year, then I think it's actually in a good position because it will have held the line. And that's when I think Russian leaders may start seriously thinking, we're not going to achieve a decisive breakthrough. Whatever the rhetoric, we're not going to win this thing. Now is the time to start thinking seriously about peace.
Jamie, I'll come to you. Are the Russians right to be feeling so confident right now?
Well, certainly they have the advantage for the time being, and as Martin pointed out, but all wars have a stage where they ebb and flow. Either side is capable of winning. The balance of advantage, if you like, isn't overwhelmingly in favor of one side or the other. And then wars reach a kind of crystallization moment, Ender, where it's clear that one side, even if it takes a year or two or more, is going to prevail because it has, more manpower, more industrial capability, more allies, for instance. I don't think we're at the stage in the Ukraine war yet where we've reached that crystallization point where it's clear that one side is going to prevail, even if, like in World War II, it could take 4 years, between the US entering the war at Pearl Harbor and the final defeat of Germany in 1945. But it is obviously going to be a difficult year for Ukraine, and Russia will feel very encouraged to try to sort of gain as much territory as it can, while clearly...
Sergey, no doubt Russia is making advances in the Kharkiv region. I'm curious that at the same time, Moscow is open to negotiation. Is that a fair assessment?
First of all, Moscow open for negotiation every moment of this war. Even before this war, Moscow had been open for negotiation. But Vladimir Putin absolutely clearly said that we don't want to repeat bad experience of Minsk I and Minsk II and Istanbul I agreements. When we come to compromise, But then, as the Ukrainian government just just deny to follow this at Istanbul, or as in Minsk 1 and Minsk 2, this time of the peace break had been used by dictator of Ukraine, who is United States of America, for the improving with Ukrainian army and starting the war again. So Vladimir Putin has very big suspicions that when United States and Western countries suggested so-called Korea scenario frozen of the conflicts, it means that will be not peace, but it will be break between two wars, which will be used by Western countries for the moving Ukrainian army from the crisis where Ukrainian army now, then a strong armament of Ukrainian army, and to start this new war again. So we don't want to repeat such scenario. That's why any peace, meaning not just peace break, but real peace with conditions of security.
One more question on the issue of Ukraine targeting towns and cities in Russia. You know Vladimir Putin very well. You've worked extremely closely with him. What will Putin do if Ukraine starts using Western missiles to hit Russian towns and cities?
First of all, Ukrainian army, not Ukraine, but Ukrainian proxy army, which is under the control of United States, already use such Western rocket missiles. British rocket missiles used, French rocket missiles will start to use, and we're absolutely sure that they will start to use American rocket missiles as well. It will lead to the Russia more strengthening of the anti-missile system, and of course it will create problem for a lot of Russian average people. But of course it only will increase popular support of Vladimir Putin inside Russia, and also popular support of that Vladimir Putin should finish this war by crashing neo-Nazi terroristic regime of Ukraine. So,
Jamie, what did you make of what the Russian ambassador said to me, that Russia can't be stopped? His exact words, nothing can stop us.
Well, he's obviously the Russian ambassador, so obviously he has to parrot the government line. That's what diplomats have to do. I know Andrei very well, by the way, from the time when he served at NATO in happier days, and he certainly used much more moderate language then. But I don't think this is based on the facts. Russia is still very far from winning the war. Ukraine is a big country. The Russians, yes, are in possession of about 17 or 18% of the territory, which is a lot, but they have struggled to capture a city. Kharkiv is still in Ukrainian hands, and their advances have been very slow and at enormous cost. And they've tended to be more successful where they've sort of advanced in areas contiguous to Russian territory, obviously with security of supply just across the border. It's been much more difficult for them to capture Kiev or other cities in Ukraine deeper inside Ukraine, where their lines of supply become overextended. The other thing, of course, is that the Ukrainians are now, as we said earlier, getting a considerable amount of Western support. And provided now in the West we sort out these issues of consistent funding, so we don't have this kind of feast or famine approach to funding, provided we have the ability to deliver the kind of systems that Ukraine needs and ramp up also domestic Ukrainian production, provided also that Ukrainians are able to build that new army, then they're going to be able to mount a serious defense. I mean, and one of the lessons of the war so far, rather like World War I, is that the defense is massively easier than the offense, particularly against well-dug-in fortified positions. Russia demonstrated that last year when the Ukrainian spring offensive was not successful because the Russians well dug in, and provided that Ukrainians do the same, or what they're doing now, which is to dig in, it's going to be equally now difficult for the Russians to advance. So I see this as sort of talking the talk, but I don't think the objective situation on the ground, as I said in answer to your first question, allows us to say decisively that, yes, one side is going to win, everything is flowing in this direction, and the outcome of this conflict is now inevitable. No, I don't see any grounds for reaching that kind of judgment yet. There's still everything to play for. Russia will be encouraged, but as I've said, if it really wants to do the kind of things that Sergey was talking about, that means conquering the whole of Ukraine, and I think that is still going to be a big stretch for Putin and the Russian army.
Martin, just talk us through what you think Ukraine needs to be doing to get through these few months until that American aid comes in where it's needed.
I think it needs to basically be doing more of the same, because, as Jamie said, the advantage of the defensive in Ukraine cuts both ways. It worked very much to Russia's advantage. This time a year ago, people were talking about the upcoming Ukrainian counter-offensive and the possibility of major retaking of territory and possibly being able to cut through all the way down to the Black Sea coast, or at least within reliable artillery range of Crimea. And as we know, none of those things transpired. So Ukraine is by no means at a significant disadvantage as it stands, and it's only going to get stronger as the new Western weaponry begins to feed through to the front lines. I think it's worth bearing in mind that for all the talk about Kharkiv and a great new Russian front and so on and so forth, all we've seen, we haven't seen a consolidated military front being opened in the northeast. What we've got at the moment are a couple of small salients and pockets of troops, at the most extending about 10 kilometres into Ukrainian territory. So the idea, certainly as it stands at the moment, this is before the new Western weaponry has fed into the Ukrainian military. If all Russia, the best that Russia can do is to establish a couple of small pockets 10 kilometres into Ukrainian territory, and still about 45 kilometres from Kharkiv, nowhere near Kharkiv in military terms, then this idea that there's going to be a decisive Russian military breakthrough this year, I agree with Jamie. I just don't see that. On the basis of present evidence, I don't see that on the cards at all.
Sergey, tell me what the mood is like amongst Russian citizens when you speak to people on the streets in Moscow, in St. Petersburg, in Nizhny Novgorod. What support is there for this war?
Most of the people don't support this war, because people think that a war is something bad thing anyway, and it could be very good if war will be replaced by the peace. I just been in the big yoga festival in the center of Moscow, where dozens of thousands of yoga activists been whole day from the early morning until the night. And as I understand, all of them doesn't like the war, but majority of the people support the goals of the war. And most of the people here believe that Russia has to continue this war because we are not aggressor. We are those who defend Russian security and Russian identity from aggression of Western countries. And most of the people believe that Ukraine is part of the historical Russia. Kiev, if you may know, been capital of Russia during 300 years. So Kiev is Russian city, Kharkiv Russian city, Odessa Russian city. 80% of the Ukrainians, they are Russians. That's why, and the Americans want to, by violence, by terror, to make anti-Russians from those Russian people. And they've been partly successful in doing that. That's why when we have to send our troops to Ukraine, we're just defending our identity. If we will not stop Americans in Kharkiv and Odessa and Donbass, we will have to fight against America in Voronezh, in Tula, in Belgrade and another Russian cities nearby the Moscow.
Jamie,
it's how people see it.
Jamie, when you hear rhetoric like that, how on earth are we going to sit around the table this year and talk peace?
Well, I agree with you, Ender, on that one. I find this talk from Sergey a little bit alarming because, for example, you could then, if you're British, take the view that we should reclaim Calais and Bordeaux in France because they were possessions of the English crown in the first part of the 16th century. The French could stake a claim to the Netherlands because in 1810, at the height of the Napoleonic Empire, the Netherlands was incorporated into France. The Germans could try to stake a claim on Alsace-Lorraine. You get my argument. I mean, if you look at European history, where borders have changed constantly over the years and populations have shifted around, if you start saying that, okay, because we had a certain possession sometime in the past, this gives us an inalienable right to reclaim it, we would be set for anarchy in the international system and for many years to come. It's also not true that you have to incorporate people who speak your language within your border for those people to have close contact with you or to enjoy rights. I mean, I live in Belgium. I'm a Belgian citizen now, as well as a UK citizen. And down in the eastern part of Belgium, Ender, we've got a German-speaking minority. But they're not sort of saying that they have to join Germany because the Belgians are abusing their human rights or the only way they could cross the frontier and go and work in Germany is by having German passports. So no, I mean, look, we're Europeans and we have to accept that international law means that the existing international recognized borders are the borders. They're the only valid borders, and anything that might have existed 500 years ago, sorry, that's part of history and that's in the past. And it gives no mandate whatsoever for imperialist ambitions to try to recreate that in the future. Russia would not benefit either, I don't believe, Ender, from that kind of doctrine in the long run, because there are many different minorities in Russia which might then claim the right to rejoin other countries. So I don't think it's in Russia's interest to peddle that line either.
Sergey, you want to come back in on that?
Yeah. Just one thing. I think some it's the thing. Russia fully recognized the borders of Ukraine and the independence of Ukraine, as France recognized the border of Belgium and the independence of Belgium. The problem is that Russian language started to be prohibited by Ukrainian government first. Secondly, after 2014, it was illegal Ukrainian government, which based not on the pre and pay elections, but on the falsified election, on the terror of the forces which have been controlled by some foreigners. If French language would be prohibited by terror in Belgium, probably France's reaction to the Belgium will be exactly as Russia did.
Thanks, Sergey. Martin, I want to come to you to talk about where the front line is right now. Do you think going forward at some point, both countries would take where the front line is right now as a starting point for negotiations and draw a line where it is, as unacceptable as that would be for Ukraine?
I think it's a possibility, and there have been from time to time semi-official musings about this, not coming directly from President Zelensky and other Ukrainian leaders, but from analysts and officials who are associated with the Ukrainian government. I think that this shouldn't be seen, if such an agreement was ultimately negotiated, it shouldn't actually be seen as a victory for Russia, because I'm certain that what would be demanded in return would be two things. First and foremost, Russia would have to concede that if it was going to gain a portion of what was hitherto Ukrainian recognized sovereign territory, then Ukraine per se would need both wants and should join both NATO and the European Union. And the key military wouldn't solve all the military problems either, because the status of the Black Sea, let's say for the sake of the argument that Russia retained a portion of the Black Sea coast and Crimea, there would still need to be, I suspect, some internationally supervised demilitarization and control agreement to ensure that Russia couldn't use that in order to menace Ukraine's key shipping routes in the Black Sea. So it's possible, I'm not saying it's likely, but it's possible, but that would have some pretty significant costs from the Russian point of view.
Just ask Jamie, final question. Do you think, Jamie, the current front line would be an acceptable starting point for both countries to sit down and start talking peace?
Well, it's for the Ukrainians to decide that. I think there is a consensus among the NATO and EU countries not to impose a punitive peace on Ukraine. Number one. Number two, and I think Martin points to this, it's not an advantage at all for the Ukrainians to accept that. Not only does it reward Russian aggression, it also implies weakness. You're telling Russia, yes, come and take our territory, and we'll accept it as a de facto sort of fait acquis after a couple of years. That would only encourage states like Russia and many others to say, well, why don't we take more territory? If it's so easy to do this and the international community accepts it, why not do more? So I think it would be a sham peace rather than the just, comprehensive and durable peace that Western diplomats are talking about. And I think Martin is right. Ukraine would give up a lot of its agricultural land. It would give up a lot of its mining capacity, which is situated in the Donbass, a lot of its heavy metallurgical industries. It would give up very important Black Sea ports, Gdansk, Mariupol, which are very important for its international trade. It would be eviscerated economically, and that would make it harder for Ukraine to recover. The costs of the war are already estimated by the World Bank at about $480 billion, which is, of course, a big underestimate. And then, obviously, to develop economically in a way which would put it on the track for EU membership. So, it's great to stop the war, but if it doesn't really stop the war, and it's just what Marshal Foch once described, talking about 1919 to 1939 as the 20-year ceasefire, then really we wouldn't have gained very much from it. So I think for the time being, it's very important for the Ukrainians to push the Russians back decisively, to restore deterrence against future attacks, and to bring about a peace which is durable, which is just, and which is not simply one-sided, which is what President Putin is very much proposing at the moment. Peace, yes, but only on my terms. No.
Jamie, Sergey and Martin, thank you all so much for your insight. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Search for Roundtable TRT World, and if you like what you see there, please hit that subscribe button. But for now, from me and Brady and all of the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.